Hey guys, it's VaulSC here. I hope that you're having a good week. Today I just want to touch on a little bit of a topic that you guys might have seen thrown around on the Infinity forums and maybe in some of your Discord chats and possibly on social media like Facebook. There's a little bit of a controversy going on around some rules calls, some rules conversations to do with ARO interactions. Yet again, no surprise there. And Corvus Belli on one particular side, good old Ian Wood is out there, doing what he does. And of course, there are a lot of people who are arguing with each other and aren't happy. So I want to take the time to just explain the issue. So the main purpose of this video is to help out newer players who are maybe on the sideline, don't really know what these guys are talking about. So maybe if you watch this video, I can make it a bit clearer for you. And also to weigh in with a little bit of an opinion. I've always got an opinion about these kind of things, so I just want to share that at the end of the video, explain my perspective on it. I'm not always right about these kinds of things, but some of you guys have been asking me to weigh in and give my thoughts, especially because I run tournaments online, as you know, on Tabletop Simulator. Which brings me to the beginning of this conversation, and that is I have a little story to tell. As you guys may have known, there's a campaign I've just been running, featuring something like 100 and, I don't know, what's 14 multiplied by 8? It's over 100 players, and the campaign went really well. Everybody's had a really good time. I've had a lot of good feedback about it, but there was one particular game between a player playing one of the Pan-Oceania factions and a player playing, I think, Tunguska or one of the Nomad factions. And it was a game being spectated and streamed live. And what happened during the game is the Pan-O player had a cutter, as in the tag, the big tag with the big gun that can go in hidden deployment, has momentum of -6. And he chose to keep that tag in hidden deployment during the first game round. Like when he deployed it, not on the table. But the model's his lieutenant, so if it's not revealed by the time his turn is due to start, he'll be in loss of lieutenant, because if your lieutenant is not on the table and your turn begins, you start in loss of lieutenant, and that's an absolute disaster. But it's the Nomad or Tunguska guy going first, right? So what happens is the Nomad player is spending his orders, moving his models around the table, and very late into the turn, he activates one of his Nomad troopers, and the cutter all the way on the other side of the table, who is in hidden deployment and has no line of fire to the model in question and doesn't even have a zone of control, proximity to the model in question, declares a dodge in response to an order being spent by the Nomad player. And what that does is it breaks the Nomad out of hidden deployment. It puts him on the table because he's declaring a dodge. And at the end of the order resolution, like after the Nomad guy's done his stuff, all the way on the other side of the table, out of line of sight, we check to see if that ARO is valid or not. And it turns out that it's not, obviously, because the cutter doesn't have line of fire to the enemy model, and it's not in the zone of control of the enemy model, so it can't dodge. But here's the catch. Are you guys listening? Even though it's an invalid ARO, you're still allowed to declare it, and if you fail it, that's enough to break you out of hidden deployment. So you can see the tactic there. The Pano guy is just keeping his lieutenant hidden. It can't be killed. And he's breaking it out of hidden deployment so that he can benefit from the order it generates when his turn starts, and the lieutenant order, and the tactical awareness order. So it's a good strategy. But of course, what happened is that people were watching that game, and some people who will remain nameless were very upset that this interaction happened. It felt like something dodgy was going on, something that was underhanded was going on. What I did afterwards is I had a conversation with the Pano player who used that tactic, and he lost, by the way. He got crushed, so it doesn't matter. But the guy who was using that tactic explained to me, look, talk to the guys in the Pano team in the campaign about it, and also I had a look at a forum thread where Corvus Belli were asked a question about it. Ian Wood came and sort of verified a couple of things, and it's just public knowledge now that that's a legit thing that you're allowed to do. It's allowed by the N4 rules. So I said to him, hey, look, that's cool. Just give me a heads up next time if, you think that might upset people if you're using a rule that not many people know about. Then I went back to the Nomads guys and I said, hey, look, I talked to him and I explained it. And I just want to tell everybody watching this video especially the people who have been in the campaign. Nobody on either side of that particular incident are in the wrong. I'm not angry with anybody. I'm not pointing the finger or blaming anybody. Nobody really had a bad experience there except for the spectators. The Nomad guy won anyway. The ARO Lieutenant hidden deployment trick didn't even work. But the players themselves, are not at fault. The guy who thought it was a legit move, was acting in good faith as far as I'm concerned, and the spectators were just, a little bit annoyed that their team appeared to be up against an opponent who was trying a trick on them. Okay, so it's really important for me to just get that across. But you guys can sort of see where this is going, right? There are a lot of people in the community, especially people who are, not great with the rules, not very experienced, who are kind of going, wow, this is, a difficult thing to get my head around. It's confusing, and it's not intuitive. It's not something that I feel like I could remember. And if my opponent starts springing stuff like this on me in the middle of the game, that may not give me very good experience. I might not feel like playing Infinity. Which now leads me to talk about this other thread which our buddy King in Yellow had made a little while back. King in Yellow, by the way, great guys from the States, I believe, and has participated in some of my events without any incident. I will link this forum thread in the video description if you want to read it. Please don't spend a lot of time on the forums. They are very toxic and not very well moderated, I must say. But King in Yellow explains that this kind of interaction in Infinity isn't just restricted to a rare case of popping a model out of hidden deployment when it's convenient for you. It goes into some more in-depth scenarios where you can get into combat with troopers, and they can preemptively declare close combat attacks. So it gets a bit deeper. Let's just see what he said in one of his examples that I find the most interesting here. So he writes, okay, so example. Number 1, the active trooper, first short skill, is moves, so he's declaring a short skill move, without stealth. That's important because some troopers don't provoke AROs because of stealth, but you're of course allowed to drop stealth because it's optional, so you can declare that you're moving without using that ability. So that trooper moves, but it doesn't get into base-to-base contact with an enemy trooper. Alright? Now, because the reactive trooper is given an ARO, so there's an enemy trooper nearby, the reactive trooper can declare a close combat attack. Note that the reactive trooper hasn't been reached. It's not in base-to-base contact yet, but he can try and preemptively declare it. He can start swinging his sword, even though nobody is in range yet. If the active trooper's second short skill is to walk into base contact, the reactive trooper's close combat attack will now be valid, and so the active trooper will get stabbed as a normal roll. So my understanding is that this wasn't possible in the previous incarnation of the game, N3. I haven't checked, but I am told, I think he mentions it up here actually. We also know that in N3 it had a line that forbade the reactive troop from AROing from an active trooper walking into base contact from outside a line of fire via stealth, blah, 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 blah. This line was removed in N4. So I haven't gone and checked the exact citations of where those rules were, but the idea is that you are now allowed to declare an ARO without it being valid, just in case it becomes valid later, with the exception of line of fire, by the way, for shooting. If you're declaring a ballistic skill attack, then you have to have line of sight at the time that you need to declare it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. For people who are not understanding, if it's as if I am speaking another language, let's just quickly jump into Tabletop Simulator, and I will try to give you guys a visual example. So let me grab an auto token. So we're going to pretend that we are the Pano player, and we have a Yuching opponent. We're in control of this military orders knight over here. Call him a Santiago knight or Hospitalia or a Teutonic knight, doesn't really matter. And then there's a Guangxi. Our knight has already been wounded, so we don't really want him to take another wound. We'd like to get into close combat with a Guangxi because we can hopefully kill him that way. I don't know if this guy, he's got a double action close combat weapon. We don't want the Guangxi to blow up, but look, that's beside the point. So here are a few ways that this can work. The knight, we could spin the order, short skill, move him over here. The Guangxi could declare a chain rifle onto him, which we wouldn't want, because then we have to dodge into close combat and we might fail it, so that may not work very well. Of course, we could move up and try and shoot him, but let's imagine we spend the regular order and we take a short skill move, and we move a little bit closer to the Guangxi, and we just move him like 2.1 inches like this. Stop. Okay? Now, going over to the Guangxi, let's check for AROs. We don't have line of sight, so we can't declare a ballistic skill attack in this case. We could declare a dodge. A dodge, in my opinion, is a pretty good thing to do here. But apparently, the Guangxi is allowed to declare a close combat attack at this point. Even though there's nobody nearby, he can't see the knight, apparently he is able to declare a close combat attack. Please correct me if I've misunderstood the thread. So what the knight can do next is another short skill, but if you wanted to just jump straight into close combat like this, by moving another 1.8 there, and moving another couple of inches here into close combat, the Guangxi declared the close combat attack. We check to see if it's valid at this point, and it is. The knight's come into close combat, so then the Guangxi makes a normal roll, gets out his knife, and could potentially kill the knight on his way in. Simple as that. So if you find that a little bit unintuitive and weird, so do I, and I think most of the community does as well. I know that if we talk about the actual game situation and what the knight should actually do, forget about that. I mean, I could probably just pick a better example. Explode comes into play, the dodge is better, but the idea here is that you can get into close combat that way in N3 through various methods, but with N4 it's definitely different. Let's have a look at this example here where the Guangxi is just not around the wall, it's just facing the wrong way. So the knight picks up, moves over here, 3.4 inches. Guangxi could declare a dodge, but it could also declare a close combat attack. Just imagine this is a model without explode and has really good close combat ability. The knight then moves again, bang, it would get hit by a normal roll. Now you may be saying, hey look, the knight could just stop there, spend a new order, walk into close combat, they have a face-to-face roll. Yeah, that's sort of, again, besides the point. I mean, we can come up with examples where we have a very vulnerable model and we don't want to give this enemy model a normal roll, and you can engineer the thought experiment however you like, but I'm just trying to explain to people that this has kind of blown the game wide open. You might be able to come up with a lot of other examples where an enemy model's just declaring things and you're nowhere to be seen, and you're just checking to see if your model can gain any advantage from declaring a hypothetical dodge or close combat attack or whatever it might be, just in case it gets the opportunity later. And you can certainly see how that might slow the game down. Now, there was also a flowchart that came up. I think this is kind of funny, although a lot of you guys are not laughing. There is a flowchart here, which I think is on the forums or social media, and it's by Differation, and it basically just explains how, the rules validity works depending on what kind of orders you're declaring and what reactions you want to declare, and it just goes on all the way down to here. So this really is it. This is technically what the Infinity rules break down into. And I know that N4 was an effort by Corvuspelli to make things easier and simpler for new players. They came out with Code 1. But, you've got Ian Wood and friends on the forums basically saying, no, this is how it works. This is rules as written. This is what they wanted to go for when they were making the rules. It got brought up and confirmed. And, you're allowed to declare an ARO without it being valid initially, and just in case it becomes valid later, and that may be a thing in some situations where you can gain little advantages. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this flowchart. You guys can probably find it pretty easily if you search through the forums or on Google or on Facebook, social media, that kind of stuff. So this is a kind of a big talking point at the moment, and I don't really have a lot to say about it. Point number one that I'll make, I did a survey recently for everybody who was in my campaign, and I asked people, did you like the modifications that I made to Corvuspelli's ITS rules? For example, N4 doesn't have limit insertion. I brought that back. N4 does have decompression zones. I took them out. Just stuff like that. Also, Intelcom card, knowing the lieutenant's willpower when you make the roll. So I've reversed all of those for my games, and it's very homebrew. You know, you have to start to keep track of all of the little changes VaulSC's made to Infinity. But overwhelmingly, everybody who played in the campaign and then voted in my poll after experiencing those changes, overwhelmingly voted that they wanted to stick with them because they're good, sensible changes. I want to let everybody know that if Corvus Belli doesn't fix the ARO shenanigans that we're currently having to talk about, I will personally rule them into oblivion in my events. It'll be a little while before I do another event. I can say that, at least a little while. But if this is still a thing in Infinity, when the time comes for me to put on a new event, I will basically be saying, hey, look, you cannot preemptively try and declare an invalid ARO. It's going to be checked earlier in the process, not like right at the end. I'll put some work into it, and I'll consult various people, and I may make it a little bit more granular. But the main point is, guys, that if Corvus Belli doesn't fix this, I will come up with fixes for it in my particular events, because I don't want people trying to enter these competitions and getting gotcha'd and caught out by something which is just really unintuitive, just for the sake of the other player just getting a little bit of a win. The second point that I will make and that I will say here is that this, in terms of the implications for how we play in terms of strategy and tactics, not a big deal. But in terms of Infinity as a game, as a community, as a hobby, it is a big deal. Corvus Belli does need to fix it. They are very careless when it comes to rules and the way they're interpreted by the community. So they really do need to come out and FAQ this in the right way, change their core rules if needed, put out an errata, so that people can just move on and enjoy what they enjoy. Painting models, showing up to tournaments, playing on TTS, and having really fun games where it's intuitive and both players can easily understand the rules. And for it to be easy to teach new players the rules without new players, going onto forums and social media, seeing all this controversy and going, I don't really like the look of that. This game looks like it might not be for me. I'm just going to stick with 40k. Whatever it may be. So that is my opinion, guys. That is what I think. Hopefully that you were able to understand this video. If I've gotten things incorrect, that's my fault. I get things incorrect sometimes, but I had a pretty good look at it, and I just wanted to really share those thoughts. So thanks for watching.